Several weeks later, my mom made a comment to me, which made me a little sad. She said, all these years I thought you were okay. And here you are 24 years old and you're bringing it up like maybe you weren't okay.
That's the voice of Jill McMahon, who we are going to sit down and spend the next 35, 40 minutes with because of all that she has learned along the way. And one of the questions that we're going to start with is this idea around what age or how old are you when you should start acting like you know better? Let's jump in.
Looking for no bullshit conversation about mental health? Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
When did you start to come around and live your life like you knew better? Because you're a therapist, you're very well trained, you're insanely smart, you got a million tools up there. So how old were you? Maybe it wasn't an age, but a season where you started to come into that knowledge and actually apply it to your life.
And that was the hard question, right?
Yeah.
You posed that question to me a little while ago as we were getting into the depth of our conversations like we often do. And I remember I couldn't give you a concise answer because it feels so multi-layered to me. I think my evolution, or maybe I believe that the evolution of all people occurs in waves.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think some of us remember very, very distinctly and we associate it with an event or a time as to when we were kind of shaken alive and we live kind of this new ideology or way.
Because we said, if memory serves, we said some people don't have this moment of clarity until they get into an auto accident or they get the bad news they've got cancer or somebody dies or they have a big ass life change or something like that. And so for people who unseemingly go through their life without these traumatic hits that take place, do they ever awaken, come to clarity? And I'm going to assume they do. I don't know. This is just fun for me to talk about.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because that's the spitball. I'm not sure that they do. So it's funny, during the intro, you let everybody know that you're sitting in my office, and I'm giggling a little bit because I'm sitting in my white therapist chair right now, and you are literally sitting on the patient couch. I'm kind of feeling like you should lay down at the moment. But in this room, like let's just sit and think about that for a minute. In this room, I've spent thousands of hours with individuals. I deal in trauma. So I specifically deal with individuals who have lost a loved one to suicide. It can be some other trauma, but that's most of my work is lost to suicide. And I can't tell you, my friend, how many times those clients have come in and have said, like, I'm living on an island alone. Nobody gets it. When is anybody ever going to get it? I don't really care what happened during the hockey game last night. I don't really care what's happening politically. Like, my whole life has been turned upside down and I see it very, very differently now. There's that catastrophic event you were talking about. And what I always say to them is they just don't get it yet. Yet. They will, and we hope they will. I don't know that for sure. But I think that most people experience a catastrophic event at least once in their lifetime. And for those individuals that I work with or that you and I come across that are 17, 19, 21, they might experience it earlier than others. And for them, sometimes it's a little bit of a burden because they feel like they're walking around the world with a different vantage point or a different mindset than everyone else.
You and I were just talking about Ted Lasso a second ago.
Yeah.
And there's a line in the last Ted Lasso episode, not the finale, but the second to the last, where him and his mom are talking to each other and they're getting really animated.
Right.
And he's doing this big thank you, fuck you thing to his mom. And he's like, thank you for this, but fuck you for this, right? And one of the things that he says to her is he says, thank you for this, but then he says, and fuck you for not making me feel like I could grieve my father's death. Because she didn't really show her emotion, so she didn't really lead the way for him or make him feel like, as a child, he could grieve. Because she just pushed on, tried to do the best thing for the family.
Oh, yeah.
You see this all the time, right?
All of the time.
And what it said to Ted was, don't grieve. Everything's fine. You're okay.
I will think of you less than if you do, because that's not what I'm doing. So, right, it sends the message, especially to children, do what I'm doing, not what I'm not doing, right? Okay, so let me call it out what I think it is, which is a tad bit controversial, but I have no hesitation saying this all of the time. It's primarily an American thing.
Is it?
It is a human thing, but especially when it comes to the Ted Lasso scene and grieving, we are horrible grievers as Americans, and it's stronger, bigger, better, more all day long. And we are setting that example for our kids from the get-go. This is a whole different podcast, Matthew. We could go there, but it's oh, you got a 98 on your spelling test? Why didn't you get 100? Oh, that's great. You're in an AP class? Well, why aren't you taking honors classes, vice versa? You're in an honors class? Why aren't you taking an AP class? Are you going to try to get some more college credits? I mean, let's get ahead and get some college credits. Even though you're a junior in high school, let's start college off right. It's when is enough? Or I know you can dig just a little deeper. We've stopped just resting. Let's just rest and pause and be with the emotion that we're experiencing in that moment. That's really scary.
Because you have to feel it.
Yeah.
But I wish more people would lock on to that, because what I would say to you is when you allow yourself the opportunity to feel it, you can actually move through it. And if you just keep pushing it off to the side, it's never going to get dealt with.
No. Can I go back to a question you asked?
Yes.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
And we have had this little tennis match with this in the last hour. You asked me, and I just found the answer. You asked me, when it was that I realized, I don't know, that I was different, or that it was time, that I just see the world a little differently. I was so young, but I wonder if it was after my mom and I were kidnapped when I was 6.
I had no idea.
Well, it's not a party.
You don't lead with
It's not
that?
a party topic. I don't lead.
Jill
Hi,
was
Jill
kidnapped.
McMahon. Nice to meet you. She was kidnapped when I was 6.
Okay, so let's go.
Here's the deal. That Ted Lasso example could not have been more perfect, because after that event, it was never spoken about again in my house. And I have no resentment or sadness or anger over that, because it was a long time ago. And at that time, in our culture, that's how you handled it. There was this irrational belief that to cause the least amount of damage to a child, you don't harp on anything negative, right? So I truly believe that my parents, even my siblings, kind of had this philosophy: if we don't mention it again, Jill's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it was always weirdly this question in the back of my head. It was never, did I make it up? I knew that I didn't make it up, but it was kind of like, I want to know more. As I got older, 11, 13, 17, 24, I was like, am I remembering it right? Like, what, were they ever caught? I don't think they were ever caught.
So you never had a dialogue about this?
Not until I was in graduate school.
Okay, so years later.
Probably 24, 25 years old. And just for all of those that are apprehensive about going to counseling, I will tell you that we are absolutely forced to do all of our own work as part of our training before they give us that degree. So we had to do all of our internal child work, dialogue, trauma work, all of that stuff as part of our graduate process. And I remember being scared to death. I have never shared this story publicly with anybody, right? This little part right here. It was a homework assignment, and part of my way of cleaning out the trauma or cleaning out the event was that I needed to talk to other people in my life that were there during that time as well. And I was nervous as all get out. I happened to be living with my parents at the time while I was in graduate school. I sat down during dinner and I was like, well, hey guys, like, I have a topic for you. And I remember, again, because Ted Lasso, if that's what's modeled to you, that's what you believe is expected from you. It was not modeled that it was okay to discuss it. So I was extremely anxious. And I think I asked some benign question like, what year was that again? That's how I asked it. I can't remember in my exact memory bank. What was the exact year? And then, my dad was like, well, it was the year of that we had the PGA golf tournament in town. So let's figure that out. And I was backtracking into it because I was nervous. And that conversation, which was not deep at all, lasted all of 10 minutes. That's the only other time we really spoke about it at any length. Several weeks later, my mom made a comment to me, which made me a little sad. She said, all these years I thought you were okay. Right? And here you are 24 years old and you're bringing it up like maybe you weren't okay.
Well, you weren't.
Yeah.
You'd carried that with you your whole life.
But there was this feeling as a young adult, which I can relate to so many of my clients of, well, I'm not meaning to cause her any pain. I don't want to cause her any pain. I don't want her to think that she damaged me anyway, because she hadn't. But it also hadn't been modeled for me. Mm-hmm. So I think both things can coexist, right? I think the model can be faulty, yet at the same time, not intentional.
If I'm incorrect about something, go ahead and correct me wrong. But for those of you who are listening to us right now, who are in the midst of some awful thing, and you're on the fence about whether you should bring this up to your family members or not, mm-hmm. or have this open dialogue or not, can I please just be the one to encourage you to get messy? Can I please be the one to encourage you to bring this up and not worry about how and which way it's going to go? Don't think that you're going to control the narrative. Don't think you're going to be able to control people's emotions if they get mad or upset or they cry. Is this awful advice that I'm giving people?
It's beautiful advice.
Go through it.
It's beautiful. Get messy.
It gets back to what we talked about for the topic today, which is we know better. There's so many things in life where we know better, but we don't act like we know better. We know better that talking about it will probably produce a better result.
Absolutely.
Terrified to talk about it.
Terrified.
Because we are, in my estimation, at least in the work that I've done with myself, I think the only reason we're terrified is because we can't control the situation. Because we don't know how they're going to react. And that's where all the fear comes in. We don't even know how we're going to react.
So let's think about that for a minute. It's a protective factor, right? It is, I believe, it's fear of hearing the words come out of your mouth. There may be fear of giving the event, the trauma, the anxiety, the fear of voice.
Yes.
There is fear of that because
100%.
And let's go back to, I love that you said it's fear of control because I'm not sure I'll be able to control my tone. I'm not sure I'll be able to control my voice from shaking. I'm not sure I'll be able to control my tears, my body language.
Right.
Whoo, all of that. And I'm going to tell you, yeah, nail on the head. You're not going to be able to control somebody else's reaction. Most of us are people pleasers, even if we don't think we're people pleasers. And the ones that love to tell you that they don't give a rat's ass about what anybody else thinks about them, the biggest liars of them all. Those are the ones that actually care the most. That is so proven.
Yeah, right. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Really?
You really didn't need to make that statement unless you did.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And that's hard. It's challenging, but I could not agree with you more. Release yourself now. Here's the deal. You're either going to release yourself now and be able to breathe easier, or you're going to release yourself 10, 20, or 30 years down the road. I promise you're going to do it either way. Either it will happen to you later on in life where you won't have a choice and you will be backed up against a wall and you will be so unhealthy, or you will be so erratic that it just spurts out of your mouth without any control. But you've lived 20 or 30 years of pain, hell, frustration, which has now created a negative story, which is now impacting your relationships with other people. Or you can just feel some discomfort now, but release yourself of it now.
Somebody's listening to us right now and they have something they want to bring up. maybe to their mom, maybe to their dad, maybe it's to their spouse, but it's heavy. For me, I always advise tone, and I always advise honesty. And so what I mean by that is you cannot bring venom to the conversation.
Ever.
Unless you want to like not move the needle.
Yeah.
Right?
Ever.
And what I mean when I say honesty is I think you have to tell people how the conversation is making you feel. So for example, if I'm nervous to talk to you, Jill, about something, when I'm being honest, I'm going to walk into the room and I'm going to say, I'm really nervous to have this conversation with you right now.
Perfect. Great way to start it.
What's your take on that? From your training, from your years in dealing with this?
So I'm going to add one pointer to your list,
Great.
right? So tone, honesty, and timing. Timing for me is big. So we often say in my field that if you have or if anybody out there who's ever done any type of couples counseling, this is a key rule in couples counseling, and every one-on-one conversation is really some form of couples counseling, even if it's with your boss.
Right.
Right? It's just an exchange between two people, a vulnerable exchange between two people. Timing, make an appointment, right? So it would be beautiful if you just decided today that you really want to have this conversation. Like Mathew and I would not be more psyched if you decided today that you're ready to have the conversation. That doesn't just mean you can walk into the living room tonight during, like the last episode of Succession or whatever it is that you're binging and go like, hey babe, I got something to say. Like timing.
I love that.
So actually it sounds so silly, but like, hey, can we get together on Thursday night? I would like to either have a date or a child talking to a parent. Like, I'm really busy this week, but I have some stuff that I want to process with you or go over with you later this week. Do you have time on Thursday? Mm-hmm. Thursday would be great. I'll be home from work at 5:30. Maybe we can do dinner, just you and I. You're not going to want to say 2 weeks from now because that person, that their mind is going to linger for 2 weeks. Like, oh my gosh, what's heading my way? But just by making an appointment, that says to the person that you're trying to speak to, this is important.
Yeah, it does.
Right? So you have spoken so much about phones and phone down. So you need to walk into that conversation and you need to put your phone across the room and sit eye to eye, turn the TV off. And I would just start with, I've been sad. You need to use I statements. I love what you just said. Like, I'm really nervous to have this conversation, right? That's real. That makes somebody stop, pause, and open up their ears. Or you can just start by saying, I'm sad, and I want to tell you why, but use I statements. Remember you said tone and venom? Included in that is you. So this is something that we're working on in my house.
That's like posturing, right? Like it can't be,
it can't be you.
Pointed fingers,
you remember that one time? This would be an example. Right. You walk up to your parent or you walk up to your sibling and you say, remember that one time that you ratted me out, or when you were talking to Josie and you told Josie that I, really text her boyfriend when I didn't text her boyfriend. Okay, the second you are engaged in a serious and scary conversation and you use the term you, the person you are speaking to closes their ears and instantly goes into defense, right? When they go into defense, they have now shut you out and they are creating the response that they're going to give you in their mind. So it needs to be I statements. When you called Josie and you told Josie that I was texting her boyfriend, that made I felt scared, sad, denied, backstabbed. I statements. I don't like it when I feel left alone when you go out of town for the weekend, Mom, and you don't check on me one single time. It makes me feel not important to you.
Right.
It makes me feel devalued. It makes me feel less than in your eyes. Using I statements instead of you statements.
So what I want to point out is that we've literally just passed away one of the greatest tools in the world, which is how to have a hard conversation. Mm-hmm. And for so many people, myself included, I spent years avoiding those hard conversations for all the reasons I just mentioned, because I wanted to control the outcome. And if I was in my head and I was pretty sure that I couldn't exactly figure out how they were going to react to my situation, I wouldn't do it.
Yep.
And by the way, I was pretty good because of my childhood upbringing at reading a room and knowing what was going to happen next. That's a gift that I have. And so I could go through these hard conversations with people and I'd be right sometimes. 100% right. And that's where the story starts. It's like, no, you're actually pretty good at this. So if you're feeling like you don't have to have that hard conversation, you probably know the outcome, and so don't worry about it. You're usually pretty good at this. And then you just avoid.
Okay, wait, dig into that a little bit more for me.
Yeah, let's dig, because I felt like that's something.
Can you give me an example of that? Because I want to make sure that our listeners are, I think I understand, but I'm not sure. I want to make sure that our listeners are understanding.
Yeah, let me try to think of a really great example, or even just a low-hanging piece of fruit example. It'd be something to the effect of, let's use a work example.
Sure.
I have a creative idea that I think would be great for us. I'm pretty sure that our boss is going to say, no, we don't have the budget, or it's not a great idea based on some other conversations that we've had. So I'm just not even going to bring it up.
And then what happens?
Well, honestly, what happens is you don't even give them a chance to say yes to your idea.
Exactly.
That's what we need to point out.
Even if it was a slim possibility, a 1% chance, you've just now shut the door. But what happens to you internally if you do that enough and you don't even put yourself out there for a possible yes? What happens to you inside?
Man, honestly, I think it's just it's a slow death. You just start to shut down. You stop asking questions. You stop even worrying about what you need because it's not important.
A narrative evolves.
That's exactly
right. And it's
right.
a narrative that you've created that's irrational and false. And the narrative that if I'm right, Mathew, is, well, they're just going to say no anyway. Nobody believes in me anyway. Nobody values my opinions anyway. Oh, well, now it's going to grow to my creativity is just overseen here. Why am I even here? Everybody disrespect. I mean, it grows, right? If you repeat that pattern over and over and over, it's self-sabotage in some ways, I think.
I don't think at all. It is. It is 100%.
You think a lot.
Listen, I'm certified in self-sabotage, so I'm really good at it and recognize all of the symbols and signs everywhere. And that's exactly what it is. You're hurting yourself.
But isn't it irrational? You don't need to hurt yourself.
100%.
And 9 times out of 10, nobody has actually said no to you. You've created the narrative that they're going to say no to you. Then all of a sudden you feel devalued.
Here's a great example. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let me put on
Always ready.
Let me put on my vulnerable hat.
Ooh. I want to see what that looks like.
Mathew's less than shining moment in his life. So I don't know what year. I forgot what year Prince died. I'm kind of in the early stages of my anxiety and my depression.
Okay.
And I am falling back on, so I have 3 addictions in my life. I've been gambling and I've been winning a good amount of money and I've been losing a good amount of money.
Okay.
And I did all of this without my wife knowing that this was taking place. That particular year, I believe I'd won something like $18,000 or something like that. And it was tax time. And we were getting ready to go to the accountant's office. And I wanted to 1,000 times bring this up to my wife, but I could never muster the courage because I was in my head 100% certain how she was going to react.
Right.
I was 100% certain that the shit was going to hit the fan, that it was going to be ugly, that I was going to feel like a loser, that all of the things were going to take place. That's just real. And so I avoided it. I didn't bring it up. I found ways to be creative and keep it quiet. But that particular morning, we're getting ready to meet our accountant at 10:30 in the morning, and lo and behold, Prince dies.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still on the radio. And Prince is my favorite artist of all time.
That's a big day.
So I have to stay on the radio, and I have it cooked out in my head that I'm going to show up to the accountant's office earlier than my wife, and I'm going to tell him we're going to leave this gambling shit off the table here today, and you and I can deal with that separately, but I don't want it to come up in this meeting. But because Prince dies, and because I don't actually get to go to the meeting.
Oh, dear.
That's how my wife finds out about it.
Oh.
And I literally get a text message while I'm on the radio. She's like, did you win $18,000 last year? And of course, I sunk. Felt all of the things I thought I was going to feel about myself all came rushing true.
All of them. Oh, at once.
The whole story came
Yeah.
out. What a piece of shit. What a loser.
Yeah, it was a
You're the
tsunami.
worst husband. You're the worst father. All of it, right? And what happened when I got home? The polar opposite of what I thought was going to happen. Why didn't you tell me about this? It's okay. We're going to get through this. Wow. Don't worry about it.
Oh my gosh.
This is my point, is that you think you know how it's going to unravel.
Look at that.
And you're almost always wrong.
And you tortured yourself all year long.
For a year.
Right.
I sat in that shit by myself with the whole thing and the whole story because I was so scared. My wife's never given me one reason to be scared to bring something to her attention. Not one time.
Right. You created this irrational narrative and you kept feeding it and feeding it because you couldn't be in control, because you were scared. And look at all of that time throughout the year that you sat feeling shitty.
Yeah.
When you didn't need to. That's a beautiful ending to a very real story, my friend. Like they can't see me, but like I was making all the facial expressions in my hands. My hands were flying in the air. Like I really was like, can I have more butter, please? Like keep talking. But wow.
Yeah.
All of it. Because that was so human. That is such a very human example that I think almost everybody can relate to.
I hope so.
If it's not gambling, it's shopping, or it's anything. I've had a relationship with your sister for the last 15 years, and I know you hate her, and I'm not supposed to be talking to her on the side, or whatever it is, right? Like
thousands of couples are
Scary.
doing stuff where they're kind of hiding it behind each other's back because they're worried about how they're going to feel.
Yep.
But what I want to tell you is that, number one, it's wrecking you inside. So now you're bringing a worse version of yourself to the party. And number two, you're doing something to the relationship that it doesn't deserve. Because my wife never gave me any reason to act that way around her. And every reason that I should just trust her and respect her and know that I can come to her with the worst parts of me. Just as she could me. Nickley could come to me with the worst parts of her. And I would still want to be around her.
And at the end of the day, you may be shocked at first, but if you are in a partnership, you should always be able to come back to, babe, it's fine. I get it. We're going to make it through this. Let's talk through it.
Right.
Right? So I have this phrase that I say all of the time, and I probably repeat it so often, more for myself than anybody else that I'm sharing it with. But it is, the brain believes what you tell it. Mathew, I say that every day. And I say, it's really funny now speaking with you. Like I say it to other people. I say it when I'm speaking in public. I say it when I'm helping somebody through a difficult time. I say it when I'm working with teenagers. Your brain believes what you tell it, so be careful what you say. Your brain believes what you tell it, so be careful what you say. I think I say that and repeat that just as much for myself as anybody else, but it's so simple and so powerful.
Yeah.
What narrative had you been telling yourself for a year? You had begun to believe it, that the shit really was going to hit the fan, and it absolutely did not.
And that's the thing that I hope to impress upon a lot of people, my own kids included, is that idea that more times than not, people want to say yes to you. If you're in the right environment, people should be cheering for you.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I do try to impart this on my kids as well. If you walk into any situation with a grateful tone and that beautiful honesty, almost nobody wants to say no to you. The world will almost always say yes to you. There is no guarantee. That's just life, right? But people want to say yes. I want to say yes. It makes me feel good to say yes. If you walk in with the right tone and beautiful honesty / humility,
Right.
I'm probably going to say yes to you every time.
And we should be clear. We're talking about things that are rational.
Yes.
Like you can't come in and ask for irrational things and expect to hear a yes, but
I want a Maserati.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Well, so again, I feel like here we have served up a couple of different tools now. Here's another one. Is like every time you think you're going to hear the word no, you're probably actually going to hear the word yes. Just reevaluate how you're going to approach that conversation.
Yes. I cannot say that louder.
Yeah.
Yes. Megaphone. Yes. It all depends on your approach. You know, for the young adults or the teenagers, something as simple as I really want to go to that dance this weekend, or I want to be ungrounded, right? Okay, here's the deal. Every single one of those situations is situational. That didn't come out right.
I think it was perfect.
You know what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. However, I'm going to tell you that if you can approach your parents with a beautiful tone, and I really would like to sit down with you, and some humility, show some emotion, show some honesty, and say, I know I'm supposed to be grounded until Monday, but I'm asking if maybe you can make reconsideration and raise my grounding on Friday because Saturday there's something really big that's coming up, and I'm going to feel like I don't want to miss it, and these are the reasons why, and I know what I did was wrong. I'm just asking you to make an accept. I mean, that's so, from a parental perspective, if I had a child that came to me with that rationale and the thought that he or she put behind it, and the calmness, not like, you're so unfair and I don't understand why you won't cut me a break this time, and I've done everything you've asked me to do. Well, I'm going to tell you right there,
expect your parents to parent.
Right.
In that moment.
And that tone is not welcoming to me. So again, that is simple listening. My ears will close just due to the tone, and I will become on defense. I do coach a lot of teenagers through difficult conversations, and I will just say, like, trust me, if you come halfway, parents want to say yes. We actually really, really want to say yes. Saying no is the hardest part of our job.
But what kind of value you have been in this space for a number of years. You must have seen transformations take place.
All the time.
When folks finally work on their stuff, what is possible?
Peace.
Okay.
Calm. Self-respect.
I like those three things.
A new relationship with yourself. And the moment you have a new relationship with yourself, you have a new relationship with everybody. Brightness, because I think most people that let the narrative run their minds live in a shadow. That there is something creeping around the corner all the time. That somebody is out to get them. That somebody is out to dupe them. That somebody is wrong for everything in their lives. You're giving your control away. It's the moment you feel more empowered or more in control is when you really come to life. And I'm here to say that I think until you are in that spot, you're not really living.
So peace, hope, self-respect, a new relationship with myself. Like if those are things people want to achieve.
And that affects your relationship with every other person in your life. Every other relationship will feel better.
Nothing will be the same.
Oh, no.
Right. Nothing will be the same. Somebody told me one time, they said, you're going to keep eating what everybody gives you. You're going to learn to cook for yourself.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, me too.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to a degree, that narrative, that story is all your life experiences. That's what's feeding you. And I'm saying, you're the author of the story. You're the author of the book. You certainly get to dictate what words show up in the next chapter. Own that.
Every day.
Own that.
Yeah. Your brain believes what you tell it, my friend. Your brain believes what you tell it. So be careful what you choose to say to yourself.
All right. What's the next step for you?
Gosh. I think that's what I'm feeling out right now. What's the next step for me? I closed my private practice. Sitting in people's pain for 20 years was beautiful and an honor, a true gift. But you can only ingest so much pain before you need to create some space for yourself. So that's where I am.
I just think what happened to you is you've been filled with all of this stuff, And now you're kind of ready to give it back in a different way.
I am. It's
not-
exciting,
it's
really.
not so much that you like got filled up with all this hurt and pain and stuff, and you're over here in the corner going like, oh, I can't move. It's like, no. You got filled with all this stuff, and now you're ready to give back to people in a way to empty yourself out a little bit.
Thank you for reframing that for me. In all honesty, I mean that, Matthew. Thank you for reframing that for me, because that feels really good.
It should feel good.
It feels good.
Yeah, but that's how I see you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I am going to change that narrative in my mind, and that's the narrative I'm sticking with. I just think I have a lot of. I've always said that if my job has ever given me one thing, and it's given me many, many, many things, but the number one thing is perspective. I feel like through listening to other people's stories, I've gained perspective on what's really important in this world, and I feel like I have a lot of wisdom and perspective to share with other people.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, thank you for spending a couple of minutes with us today on Learn from People Who Lived It. Just a quick reminder that the entire month of July is going to be Intimacy Month here on Learn from People Who Lived It. And this is going to be one incredible week. We're going to sit down with Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick, and we're going to talk about everything from what is intimacy, how do I get it back when I feel like I've lost it, what are different types of intimacy. It's going to be incredible. And we are all going to walk away with a really clear understanding on what our role is in creating those intimate moments and creating stronger connections with the people we claim to love. It should be a great series, and the thing that I'm most excited about is the 4th week is going to be dedicated to you and your questions and your concerns. So when it comes to intimacy in all forms, and remember, intimacy isn't always sex. What are things you wonder? What are things you want to know? What are things you'd like us to answer? Please head on over to Learn from People Who Lived It. There's a Contact Us tab there. You can hit that and send us a quick question. We'll get it, and we will make sure we answer it during the month of July on Intimacy Month here on Learn from People Who Lived It. You guys have a great day. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.